Okay, some of you, or a lot of you, I see lots of familiar faces out there. And I have to tell you, this is about the most nerve-wracking thing I have ever done at the University of Dayton. I am usually the listener, not the teller. So hopefully I can get my story out and share it and be part of this evening tonight. So my topic, when is good enough good enough? It's a theme of my life, and as I go through, you'll hear the theme come through often. My prop for tonight is the Chutes and Ladders board game. Now, how many of us have played Chutes and Ladders? Yeah. Great metaphor for life, right? We have ladders sometimes where we go up, and we have the chutes and the slides where we go down. And I will share with you some of my ladders and some of my chutes, because they certainly have been there. As I think about stories, we have an outside story and we have an inside story. A lot of you know my outside story. We just talked a little bit about my outside story. This is how I'm known outside. But what I was asked is not to share my outside story, because that's kind of boring, dry, and not something that's necessarily what we want to hear. So tonight I'm challenged with telling my inside story, and so I will do that. When asked to do this, I tried a number of ways to say no. Obviously, it didn't work. God didn't give me that word. He kept saying yes. Yes, you can do this. Yes, you will do this. Yes. So here I am tonight saying yes. And also, I'm a big person and I love quotes, and I get a quote a day. And I met with the committee about a month ago. The quote of the day when I met with the committee was this: "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." By Maya Angelou. So here we go. Here's my inside story. A couple little things. Of course, I was born. That was a ladder, I think. My mom and dad sometimes, I think, would say that was a chute. Sometimes. I was born in a small town in Indiana, Plymouth, Indiana. I was baptized as a Lutheran, and as I always told Father Contadino, I'm a renegade Catholic. So for some of you would know what that is. I'm a middle child. Any middle child out there? We know we are peacemakers, right? I'm the peacemaker between two brothers. I have an older brother and a younger brother, and to this day will admit that they terrorized me and only made me stronger. They did it for my good, which maybe so. When I was about 4, my family moved from the town where my parents had grown up to another small town in Indiana. So I grew up in Goshen, Indiana, and I like to say Goshen is in between South Bend and Fort Wayne, and it's nice Amish country. I'm not Amish though. To start my story, I had a very life-altering event when I was about 6. It's where all of this all begins for me. Was a chute in my life. When I was 6, for years and years and years and years, I didn't tell that story. I never told that story. Because what happened from there was, I wasn't going to tell anybody. It was going to be a normal day at school. I'm 6. It was kindergarten. And so I just wanted to go play and color and do all those things. I was pulled down to the principal's office, only to have my mom sitting there in a chair crying, my dad standing there with the awfulest look on his face, my principal, and the police. And the message I got at that point was, I was bad. I did something wrong. So what I learned from that day is that even though you think you did everything right, others might not think that. And I look back at with my mind today and look at it and like, wow, that was a really dumb thing to do, right? But it wasn't in that time, because I couldn't go out into the street. I had to do it. So So from there on, I have spent my life trying to prove that I really am not a bad person, I'm a good person, and I really am good enough. So then we go on from there. And by the way, this event was never talked about again in my family, ever. Well, I won't say ever because I brought it back up many years later. We just went along with our lives like nothing happened. And so, again, I internalized that just don't do bad things. Don't get called to the principal's office. And the worst thing anybody can say to me today is, we need to talk. Because I go into panic mode of, oh my God, what have I done now? And the police are gonna be there, and my mom's gonna be there, and my dad is gonna be there, and everybody's gonna be angry at me. So if you wanna really get to me, tell me that, because that doesn't work. So school happens next. Grade school, middle school, junior high, pretty uneventful. I learned my love for sports, and for me, I had to do sports because I wouldn't be included in my family. I had two brothers and a father who was athletic, and if I wanted to be included in anything they did, it was sports. We watched sports, we played sports, we did a lot of sports, and so I grew up with sports. And at this time, my family was moderately, we went to church on occasion. We looked around for some churches. My parents really couldn't find that church that they wanted, so I was churched some. I was confirmed when I was in junior high. So my faith life was there. I believed in God. And I knew my parents believed in God because of the things that they were teaching us. They taught us to be humble and taught us to treat people with respect no matter what. And so those were my school days. That's where I learned how to bowl. My father worked at a bowling alley. I got to bowl for free. And it was something that I started to be good at. And again, here's my search for, can I be good at something? Just something, I want to be good. And I was pretty good at that, but I never realized it at the time. Even though I had multiple trophies, I did win the state tournament at one point in time. But something along the way, I never felt like that was an accomplishment. And so again, keep striving. I kept striving for something outside of myself to change everything that had happened, which wasn't going to happen. Then I went to college. I went to Purdue. I didn't know what I wanted to major in, but I had experienced the summer before going to college where I worked in a school for mentally challenged students, and I loved working with them. What a beautiful, wonderful set of people that they were. And so I decided that, well, maybe I'll go into social work. Unfortunately, I chose Purdue because my sister-in-law went there, and it was really cool. It's the only college I visited. So I wanted to go there, and so I chose the college, not the major. Well, when I started, I figured it out quickly. I didn't want to read and write papers. I didn't like reading and writing papers. So I took a nutrition course, and so my path changed again. And I went into dietetics and graduated with a degree in dietetics. While at Purdue, I also pulled on the bowling team, as was there, and also played field hockey, which my father loved, my mother hated. She thought I was going to get killed out there. My father loved the physicalness of it, and I did too. So throughout college, again, my faith life, occasionally my friends and I would go down to the college Catholic church because they had midnight mass on Saturday night. And so we would all pile in with the other 150 students that were in there and go mass. And to me, it was very similar because Catholicism is very similar to my Lutheran background. And so there's where I was. But still, was God a strong part in my life? Not as strong as I now look back and wish God had been. But was there and guiding me every step of the way. Then graduating from Purdue, I started working in South Bend, Indiana, as a dietitian at Memorial Hospital, for anybody who knows South Bend very well. And my first year out of college, and a message to all of you, was one of the hardest years of my life. I had fun in college, various groups of friends. We did lots of things. I always had somebody to do something with, whether it was my field hockey friends or my bowling friends or my sorority sisters or just I had some random friends, classmates. There was always somebody to do something with. And then when I get into my first year of my job, I didn't know anybody in South Bend. Fortunately, it was about 45 minutes from home, so I could get there quickly. And so that first year, I just worked and worked and worked to try to find a group of people. I'm lost. I have this career going, but I still feel lost. So again, I connected through sports. I started playing softball. I found a bowling team. And again, we were off and going. And then actually, the very best thing that I did is I joined a Lutheran church and got back to being having faith as a big part of my life. At church one Sunday, I can remember sitting there, and the sermon was on gifts. And the pastor was saying how God gives us all these gifts, and we are blessed with them. And I'm sitting there thinking, I have no clue what my gifts are, and I think God forgot me because there's no gifts here, and I don't know what they are. And so I kept thinking about that and looking and striving and trying to heal all of the stuff from 6 years old on and going forward. And one of the things that happened is after this gift talk was one of my friends, I was looking to go back to school. Mind you, when I graduated from Purdue, I was never, ever, ever going back to school again. Okay, had a bachelor's, that's good enough, right? College straight. Never going back. Well, one of my friends had enrolled at Indiana University at South Bend in the Master of Counseling program. And she was telling me all these things that she was doing. And there's no better major than counseling or psychology because you study yourself, right? For any of my psych majors out there, we study ourselves. And so we learned all this stuff from her, and I thought, oh, that sounds really cool. I think I'll do that. So I took the initial class, was accepted into the program, and on I went into the counseling program. At that time at the hospital was starting an eating disorder program. And the director, and again, I don't know how my name gets places. I think it's just a simple name. And so it gets places, bathroom walls. I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere out there. And so the director had come to me as he was starting this program and said, I heard you're interested in working with an eating disorder program. And I said, yeah. Here was my interest, though. As a dietitian, I was getting people with eating disorders, and I knew it was more than just a nutritional issue. And I wanted to start a program. I was going to help start the program and then ease my way right out of it. So I had a place to refer people to, because the thing that I don't like to do is be the end for someone. I like to help people keep moving along. I like to travel in people's journeys. I want to help them move along. So what I did is said, sure, I'll help. And so a position was created, and by this time I am getting my master's, and so he created a position for me when I finished my master's that it would be half-time dietitian and half-time therapist, and so I started working with eating disorders. And one of the things I realized in that work is that oftentimes the eating disorder is just a symptom of something greater. And what we were able to determine in our program is oftentimes there's a real deep hole in people that they're trying to fill with food or lack of food or something such as that. And oftentimes I now think that there's a real spiritual connection to that, that sometimes we don't have that connection with God. And maybe God is calling us in some ways and we're just not hearing the call. So I worked in the eating disorder program for a while, and then so two biggest slides in my life were my 6-year-old experience, and then in 1994, October of 1994, my rock died, and my rock was my dad. My dad would listen endless to me. My mom, on the other hand, maybe not. But my dad was always there. He listened to everything I had to say. I know he worried about me, but he let me be independent. But he was always there, always listening. And he died in 1994. And at the time, he had cancer. And he had cancer we knew about it for about 6 months. And at the time, I thought, when my dad dies, I'm going to die, because I don't know how to live without my dad. And it was hard. It was very hard. Fortunately, I truly believe God does put people in our lives. And God put an angel in my life. Her name was Joyce. Joyce was a chaplain that worked with our eating disorder program. And every day I would go in and say to her, Joyce, I can't do this. And she kept saying, but Becky, you are. We prayed together, and off I would go and try to get through my days. And bit by bit, I healed over time. I learned a lot from that experience that now carries into my experience now. What I learned was you can't take somebody's pain away, but you certainly can sit there and walk with them and be with them in that pain. Before that, I was always trying to make people happy. I wanted to make people not feel the pain, but there's a whole lot of strength in the pain that we feel. And so it was a learning situation. Would I like to go back and change and have my dad here today? Yes. My dad would just be so proud of me. I remember when I got my master's, he was there, and he was proud of his little girl. His little girl who we used to go to the local ice cream shop when we did errands on Saturday, which I told my brothers they never wanted to go because it was really boring. Because if they went along, Dad wouldn't buy ice cream for me. But if they weren't there, Dad would buy ice cream. So it was my dad, my thing. And from that day on, and so I knew, and I still know that Dad is with me today. Dad is with me every time there's a beautiful sunset that's out there, because on the day he died, it was the most beautiful sunset that was there. And I know his message to me is, Becky, you're going to be okay. You're going to make it. You'll be okay. And so he's still with me. It was a big slide. But again, I got on my feet and kept going, or I just kept taking a step. And like chutes and ladders, you might get to the bottom of that thing, but you can still keep going up to the top one step at a time. Next along is I was working in the eating disorder program, and licensure came in, and the master's program that I did, I couldn't get licensed in the state. So I decided, well, let me just do a Master of Social Work. So I would go over to IUSB again, and another angel, although it won't sound like that, another angel, the woman that was the head of this program, said to me, I'm not letting you in this program. And I'm like, why? I mean, once again, am I not good enough? Why are you not letting me in? And basically what she said to me is I would have to do all of the hours of a Master of Social Work, 99 hours. None of my Master of Counseling hours were going to count. And she said, you will be a thorn in my side. You will be so unhappy in this master's program that I'm not going to let you in. And she's saying it with a smile. And this wasn't a cruel thing. It was with a smile. And she said, you need to go get a PhD. And then I'm like, no. No, I don't think so. I'm not smart enough. I'm not bright enough. I can't write well enough. Because you have that big paper at the end, right? I can't do that. And so I prayed about it. I stewed about it for another year or so. And then I thought, okay, God, if that road's closed off, then okay, open one up for me. And so I decided I had to take a GRE, right? You have to do that, and I hadn't before. And so I took the GREs, and with the whole promise that only if I got a score high enough, then I might think about applying. Well, I got a score high enough, and I applied. And the first year I applied, I went to, just applied to places that were real comfortable to me, and I knew people that were going to be there. And I got waitlisted at a couple of places and didn't get in. The second year I said, oh, the heck with that. I'm just going to apply to a million places and I'll get in somewhere, because now I'm ready. I'm excited. I'm going to do this, right? So I applied to Memphis, University of Memphis, and was accepted there. And it was a new culture for me. I had lived in the white north a lot, and my little town was white, my Purdue was fairly white, and now I'm going to Memphis. And again, I loved it. It was a wonderful experience. What was good about it is, in my program, the professors in my program were mostly from the Midwest. So it was the Midwest sunk in the South, which was really helpful. So here I am in this PhD program, plodding along. I can remember my first week in the program. I had left a good paying job. And I can remember thinking, what in the world are you thinking? Why are you here? Well, I like to learn, right? So that's why I'm here. Okay, give it a shot, see what happens, see where it goes. And 3 years later, I'm applying for internships because that's what you do with the last year of a degree in psychology. There's an internship. So where did I apply? But a whole bunch of places. And I actually, the chair of my department, who was this very, very gruff man, and I thought he hated me most of my life there, only to find out he really didn't. He was just gruff. So I was stewing about I'll never get an internship, and he looks at me and said, Becky, why would you not get one? You are at the top of your class. I'm like, no, I'm not. And he said, yes, you are. I'll bet you a milkshake. I bet you a milkshake that you're going to get at least 10 interviews. I applied to 12 places. 10 interviews, milkshakes on it. I said, okay, you're on. And he won. And I had to buy him a milkshake. But one of the places I applied was to Purdue, back to Purdue. And so I was accepted there. And so I go back to Purdue. Remember, I wanted to be a social worker. Now I'm coming back as a psychologist. It went full circle. And again, looking for goodness. Again, I keep striving and striving and striving. And I get there and did my internship. And then what happened was I got here. I was looking for jobs, finished up my internship, got to get a job, right? Because got student loans to pay off now. And so there was an ad for a job here at the University of Dayton. And for any of you that know Erin Shiner, she put this in there. And the thing that hooked me was, it's a fun place to work. All right. I want a fun place to work, because I do like laughter and I do like to have fun. And so it's like, okay, what the heck, I'll give it a shot. My training director, after I came for an interview, said, do you know that school's Catholic? And I was like, no, I didn't know that. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Great. Didn't care. So here I come. So I came for the interview, really liked the place, didn't hear from them for a while. And so I had gotten to the point where, well, I'm not going to get that job. So I put out a bunch of other applications, and wouldn't you know it, there's Steve Muller calling me on the phone Friday before Memorial Day saying, hey, we want to make you an offer. Well, obviously you know the outcome of that, right? Because obviously here I am 14 years later and made it, and graduated from my PhD program, did write the big paper. And after much groveling around, and a wonderful professor who in one of my classes said, Becky, what is your problem? And I said, I can't write a dissertation. That's a big thing. Smart people do that. And he said, yeah, well, you're one of those. And do you realize it's only 5 papers? Oh, okay. He said, have you written 5 papers? Well, I've written 25 papers by then. And so it's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. So I wrote it and graduated, and then here I am. So again, I think by God's grace and guidance, sometimes shoving me, sometimes yanking me and pulling me, here's where I am. And what I've learned is that I spent the majority of my time looking for goodness outside of myself. I spent the majority of my time comparing myself to others. I spent the majority of my time thinking I'm not good enough, until I realized that my goodness is not about anybody outside of myself. My goodness is between me and God. And God thinks I'm good enough. And so with that, When is good enough good enough? Good enough is good enough right now, in this moment, for everybody sitting in this room. Thank you.
So over the years, you've heard a lot of the stories and struggles and joys of a lot of college students here. And I was wondering if you could tell everyone at UD one thing when we start, what would it be?
The thing I would say is that there are going to be some real hard times and some real painful things. Stay with your pain and take one more step. Just keep taking one more step, because you will get somewhere, and where you get may not ever be where you think you're going to get. If somebody would have told me when I was sitting where you are today that this is where I would be, that I would have a PhD in psychology, that I would be successful, wrote and passed a dissertation, I would have laughed so hard. This was not in my game plan. I don't know what was in my game plan, but it wasn't this. And again, I think trust the process, trust the journey. The one thing I love to travel, both literally and figuratively. And I love to travel with UD students along the way and be a part of the journey, of your journey, because it's full of so many things. I sit here today with a part of so many people's story in my heart, and the best and the greatest gift for me is to get that email that starts out, I don't know if you remember me or not. And trust me, I remember a lot. I do. And to know where the person, I will leave the people that I walk with here, and you will keep walking on, and I love to hear where you go. But where you go is probably not anywhere where you think you're going to go. I'd love to hear where you are in 20 years, because it won't be where you think you're going to go, probably.
Looking back to, like I know we talked about what you went through in kindergarten, has that in any way, shape, or form shaped the life that you've led? I mean, looking back on it, or has it been more of a trying to push it back and forget about it, like trying to move on and build your own life around it?
And what I would say is today I can say that I have built a life around that. I accept it. It wasn't for a long time. It was probably, when I first told anybody about it was when I was an undergrad in college. And I have probably told, up to this point, I have probably told a dozen people. Now it's out there. Told a whole lot more. I tried to shut it down, but it kept coming back in interesting kind of ways. And when I hear a story similar, it comes back. What I know is, there's the old adage that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And also God doesn't give you any more than you can handle, although I question that at times. Because I think this might be it. I believe that was part of the story that needed to happen. It made me who I am today. It made me a person that can understand the pain of that. And you can't shove it away. It's part of the memory. That happened when I was 6 years old. I won't tell you how old I am now because I'm really old. But I can remember it like it was yesterday. It's embedded in my mind, but it doesn't rule my life anymore. And like with chutes and ladders, I believe that God has put ladders in my life, and I believe that God is there to catch me when I slid down the chutes and bring me over, like the game, into a square with a ladder on it again. So I tried to bury it. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't think it affected me until I got into the counseling program and my PhD program. Then I realized, yeah, it did. And so I can make it, it's always going to be a part of me, but it doesn't have to define me, and it doesn't have to take over my life.
you said that you would have like laughed at somebody who, if they would have told you that you would have a PhD and you'd be where you are today. Do you think that when God was calling you to go to where you are today, that you were like stubborn, and if you had maybe like said no, do you think your life would just, like obviously your life would be completely different, but how do you think your life would have panned out if you would have like said no to God?
I shudder to think, because I did say no lots of times, but no became yes. No became yes, you can do this. And the no's forced me to look at why was I saying no. Now there's some things I have said no to that I think that have been very good, and I haven't continued on them. But the things where the no's became yeses, I do think that that they've only made me stronger with that. I like the word stubborn because my mother would tell you that I'm one of the most stubborn people she ever met. I'm also one of the most independent people she ever met. And probably my independence sometimes it's a blessing, and it's sometimes a curse. I could ask a little bit more for things, which is something I'm working on. I don't always do that, but I, had, one of the things is if I had not quit my job and gone with the eating disorder program and going back to my PhD and gone to school, the eating disorder program that I was working at, 1 year after I left to go to school, shut down. And so I don't know where, I would have been jobless anyway. So some of my colleagues that I had worked with there said, did you know that was going to happen? It's like, no, I didn't know that was going to happen. And at that moment, it was like, oh, thank goodness I am where I am, because now I don't have to try to find another job. I will be finding another job at the end of all of this, but I don't know where it's going to be. And one of the things that going back and getting that is, I always wanted to work with college students. I love the college population. I love all you guys. I love your age. It's a wonderful age group to work with. One, you're trying to find your journey, your path, and I'd love to be a part of all of that. The other thing I went back and really wanted to do is I wanted to be able to do some sports psychology, and I have been blessed to be able to do that with some very fine young women sitting up here in the front row. They're looking at me like, is this you? We don't know this person. But I loved working with athletes. It's a way for me to be able to connect with that sport part of me. I didn't have a lot of opportunities as a kid growing up. Bowling was one of them. But, they didn't want girls to do much back then because, we might get hurt and we might not be strong enough and all that kind of stuff. Even though I could beat the boys in baseball, I could be out there with my brothers and doing all that stuff, but whatever. So it wasn't really fashionable to do stuff back then. So here today and working with the sports psychology stuff is just, that's a dream. I've hit the top now.
Yeah, when you were talking about eating disorders and working with them, you said that you just think that there's something missing, and you kind of alluded to like a spiritual part being missing. Mm-hmm. And that reminded me a lot of like Alcoholics Anonymous and their like 12-step program. And I was wondering if you've ever like said to a patient like maybe you're just like missing God or something like that, and the eating disorder.
Yeah. If that's part of what we're talking about, absolutely, I have no problem saying that. And looking at, what is that connection? Actually, what's fascinating about it is most of them will tell me that I am not connected with my faith when I'm actively involved in either eating disorders, alcoholism, any of the disorders that are there, where we're using substances to cope with feelings. The thing is that we are going to have tough feelings, and what we try to do is get rid of them. No human being likes sadness or anger or anything. We don't like that. We want to be happy all the time. But if we were happy all the time, then we wouldn't really be happy, because we'd be happy, and then it wouldn't really be happy, right? So the sadness and the pain makes the sadness, or it makes the happiness a sunny day, right? And so we had that crappy day yesterday. We need those in our lives. We need crappy days so that the sunny days are better. So I'll talk about, I oftentimes talk about that emptiness, and I'll ask, what do you think the emptiness is? And 9 times out of 10, that's what comes back. And then we'll talk about that and how do we get reconnected. And spirituality becomes a much healthier coping strategy than some of the behaviors.
I feel like the idea of being not good enough or inadequate, unable to do something is a pretty common feeling that a lot of us feel at some points. What are some more concrete things that we could do when we feel that way? Because it's always easy to say, well, you are good enough, but easier said than done.
Yeah. One of the things I will do is challenge somebody to provide me the evidence that you're not good enough. Okay, tell me how you're not good enough. Because then usually in that story, what I'm able to say is I'll flip it and say, what would good enough look like? Now, just because I say that I feel good enough right in this moment, that doesn't mean I don't have doubts. I had a big one as I'm driving here tonight thinking, why did I say yes to this? I tried a couple of times to not, but it didn't happen, obviously. So it's the doubt. And so what I try to do and encourage people to look at is, so what's going on that's giving you that message? Who's giving you that message? Is it yours? Is it something taped from the past? Because for me, what it oftentimes is it's a taped up message from the past when in that office, my mother said to me, what were you thinking? Okay? She was obviously distraught. What mother wouldn't have been? I mean, I don't fault my mother for what she said. I don't fault my parents for any of that. Wasn't their fault. But ultimately, when I get the I'm not good enough, when I'm feeling that, it's me giving myself the message, and oftentimes what it is I'm scared. I'm scared. And so now, it's what I'll ask somebody in the not good enough is, so what are you afraid of? What's challenging you? Because remember, our challenges, we need to be challenged. Do I like being challenged? Not so much. I like how it feels on the other side of the challenge. When I drive home tonight, I'm going to feel really good. Because this is what, like I said before, I'm a listener, I'm not the talker. I don't tell my story. I listen to a lot of stories.
A little nuance of your talk that I thought was really interesting was you often kind of alluded to the imposter syndrome, especially like in regards to education, that you weren't good enough for this and that everyone else knew what they were doing and you didn't know what you were doing, especially in the dissertation kind of area, which I'm sure you were not the only one. I was wondering, do you feel like that feeling has ever stopped? Have you kind of gotten like, oh, I'm here, I've got it now? Or is that a continual feeling that you deal with?
I think it's not nearly as strong because I'm not in a situation where I'm doing that many new things right now. And so I'm comfortable with what I'm doing and what I have done. So not nearly as much, but give me a new thing to do. Like, I do play clarinet in the Kettering Civic Band, but I'm also in the 3rd section. Wouldn't say I'm a professional musician. It's a volunteer group. They'll take anybody. And again, and if I have to play, and periodically our band director makes this tune. He wants to hear who's out of tune. I don't know. It's probably me. And so there I am doing my thing. So there are periods where if it's something new that I'm doing, yes, I'm scared. And I wonder, and I think, oh, I'm gonna out myself, and again, go back to that 6-year-old that made this huge mistake, and everybody's gonna see that. And so periodically, that comes back. But, you know, and do I ever give myself credit for all the things that I have accomplished? I'm getting better at it, but I'm not very good at it. I've done a lot of things, I've gotten a lot of feedback, but sometimes I still question, well, but if they really knew, then it wouldn't be like that. So, you know, yes, it never goes away.
How has Dayton being a Catholic school and working here affected your spiritual life and your vocation?
I love it. there's a freedom to talk about whatever I want to talk about, and oftentimes the people I'm talking with freely talk about God here, and I really like that. I love the Marianist influence. I like the idea of community, and so I think that's a very big, strong part of it. And I like the fact that be who you are is the common theme here. And grow to who you want to be is also a common theme. So, and again, the Catholic faith is so close, the Lutheran faith is so close to the Catholic faith. So I can go to Mass and follow along, except I'm the one that continues on with the Lord's Prayer when everybody stops. So I have to be cautious about that. And there's a couple other things that are a bit different that I'm doing, then it's like, whoops, that's not here. So I love it because it allows me to continue to be strong in what I do and talk about, I get that opportunity to talk about God.